Right, so we're outside Clink Prison, Mr.C, the home of acid house culture, rave culture as such. What does Clink mean to you?
Clink Street, I mean, it means so much to me. It's where do I begin? It's quite emotional being here. I haven't been here for the best part of 27 years, and it's changed. I like walking down the street. The whole place has completely changed, and I'm actually quite shocked at how modern. It's just cafes and bars and restaurants and the Clink Museum, which wasn't a museum 28 years ago. So let's go back, rewind to summer of 1988.
Where it all started.
Yeah, well, it was the second summer of love. And this is where basically I cut my teeth as a DJ here.
Yeah.
It was the first year I'd been DJing. I started DJing in September 87. And this is where the legendary RIP parties were. The parties were organised by Paul Stone, aka Paul Rip, with his girlfriend Lou. And yeah, they organised it through these events. And the lineup was myself, Eddie Richards, Colin Favour, Kid Bachelor, Shock Sound System, and guests. Yeah, and this place was crazy. We started doing parties in here, first on this ground floor level. The door is actually literally right there, the entrance. And the party started in June of 1988 here, after being in Evershot Street, as I mentioned earlier, and it just kicked off. We did Saturdays for through 3 weeks of June and into July. By the third week, the place was an absolute roadblock, absolutely packed. As we've gone into July, it was just a nut house. It was absolutely crazy. There was like too many people than could get in. There'd be loads of people outside trying to get in, but the place was just a roadblock. Just around the corner there, where the actual entrance is to the prison, there was people climbing drain pipes to try and get into windows to get in. It was like absolute mayhem, and the real birth of acid house culture. Before that, there was, the odd warehouse party here and there, and not far up the road, just here in Southwark Street, was Danny Rampling's famous Shum parties, and they were going before the Clink Street thing, but that was more of a Balearic thing. Okay. This was proper acid house. It was New York, Chicago, Detroit. Right. Like the Balearic thing was more poppy, it was like, just general dance music pop. Whereas here was Black America, like New York garage, Chicago house and acid, Detroit techno. And it was mental, and it was like anything went. These parties continued into July, and then it's every Saturday, and then we started doing Fridays, and the parties that were called Acid Transmission for the Friday night event. That was immediately full as well, and then by the time it got to the end of July, we started doing Zoo on a Sunday, because it's like anyone still left going after the weekend, and there'd have to be animals, so it was like a zoo. And we carried right the way through to the end of September, early October, so it lasted for 5 months, every weekend, full on. This place is absolute, it's mind-blowing, and coming back down here, it just means so much to me, being that this is where I cut my teeth DJing every Friday, Saturday and Sunday through the summer of 1988, and the acid house culture started here. When we first kicked off, people were falling out of here and walking up here to London Bridge, and everyone in like smiley t-shirts and bandanas were giving it acid in the street. And we had to tell people, like, calm down, you're hotting up the area. We don't want to know, we're secluded here a few weeks back, a few streets back, and all of this looks very residential now. Like all these are apartments here. It looks very residential. This was just a wasteland. It was like warehouse wasteland. So very, very surprising that it actually looks like this. But it's known, Clink Prison is known as a prison of debauchery. I think they were beheading people and torturing people in here. Well, let me just tell you, the debauchery continued well into 1988, and this was the home of it. So this means so much to me.
How long did your nights here run for?
Well, it was just that summer. So it was June, July, August, September, pretty much 5 months of the summer. And there was a couple. Yeah, well, the police would come and stop it a couple of times. There was the first time that they actually stopped it. Must have been July or something. And it was like right here. Police cars rolled up here. Everyone is literally right where we are now. Police cars right there. Just put his sirens on, like, to try and disperse 300 people. little do the police know that the police siren was one of the hook lines for "Can You Feel It" by Todd Terry, Royal House. So everyone's dancing around the car, giving it all this like acid, shouting acid. The police didn't have any idea what to do. It was beyond them. They were just like, it took them about an hour to get rid of everybody. But putting on the sirens did not help. Yeah, it's just one of those mad things. It's history, and that was actually covered. Time Out magazine did a piece on Clink Street and the prison and stuff. And they were saying in Time Out about the reporter that was here on that morning when the police arrived and tried to disperse of everybody. And so that's all very well documented. I might even be able to find something to send you about it. I'm sure Eddie Richards, who was the resident here, had it on his wall somewhere. So I'll dig that out for you. But yeah, it's mental. And legendary, this was where, like all the people that were, that started the energy parties, Anton the Pirate, the Sunrise parties, Tony Colston Hater, all those people, they came here. This was where they discovered acid house. This is where acid house really started in London. Well, in a few parties before, there was hedonism over in Hanger Lane at the end of '87, beginning of '88, and there was the Rip parties that were in Euston in early '88 as well. But this was where it found a home. This was where it became a culture, and that culture was to pretty much spread and become in 1989 and late '88, '89, the orbital. M25 orbital parties that were very well documented. This is where it all started, right here.
How do you think it changed the face of youth culture in that short space of time?
Oh, it did change the face of youth culture because there was so much going on. I mean, then we was under the iron fist of Thatcherism, and there wasn't a lot of money about. We was in a depression, and I don't think it was a fabricated recession like the one that we're in now. It was a real recession, and the people were looking for some sort of an escape. Also, it was like like that year before in 1987 and a little bit in 1986, the ecstasy started getting imported into the UK from America, because that was where it was being made most of the time, and then later from Holland. But ecstasy started getting imported in, and I think it was a culmination. The house music movement started in the mid-'80s in Chicago, the same as Detroit techno started in the mid-'80s, and like here in London, we embraced that music. And like the music that we was playing here at Clink Street was all New York house, Chicago house, and acid, and Detroit techno. So it was a very black American thing. The parties here were like completely mixed. It was people from all walks of life. Rich people, poor people, every race, colour and creed coming together in an escape of Thatcherite depression. And it just kicked off so hard. Everyone was out of their minds. People were on LSD and ecstasy, mostly ecstasy, but there was a lot of acid floating around in them days. People were double dropping acid and E, and they called a candy flip, and it was mental. When you went in there, some of the craziest sights, like I like my football. I'm a Chelsea fan, and I was in here. But this was the height. But this stopped football violence. Like I remember being partying in here and seeing the main boys from Arsenal, Millwall, West Ham, Tottenham, Chelsea, all in here, and saying, "Oh, have you tried these pills? Yeah, get one of these. And have you tried that? Try this." And talking to, instead of, a year before they would have been beating the shit out of each other in the nightclubs, on the terrace and in nightclubs. London was gangland. It was like outside Busby's, outside the Lyceum, there was always fighting on the streets every Friday and Saturday, and it was gang fighting. There'd be 200-300 people on each side kicking off. So partly what happened here actually stopped football violence.
It's well documented that.
And that seeing, I'd be in there thinking, oh my God, it's going to kick off. Any second it's going to kick off, and it never did. Everyone was all hugging each other, and it caused a change in so many things, because acid house and techno was born here. This is where the culture was originated from, and it stopped the violence, it pushed the music. Within that 1 year, in that summer of love of 1988, the whole of London completely exploded and blew up. It was all over. It was like end of story.
It's a good thing.
So
Is this
amazing.
before the Hacienda?
Hacienda I opened the year before, I believe, in 1987.
Okay.
And I've seen quite a few clips of it. The Hacienda seems like a bit more mainstream. What was going on here was probably a bit more dark and a bit more underground, a bit more cutting edge. what was going on in Manchester was also very indie. You know, like they had a, you know, with the label that they had, they started their record label with, you know, they had Joy Division, they had, like the whole Manchester scene blew out there. Yes, New Order, all that kind of stuff all came from there. So that isn't really acid house. You know,
No.
and there, I know that in the Hacienda they was playing acid house, they was playing house music, but it was definitely more of the more mainstream side of it. Here in London, it's the music capital of the world. It always has been. So we had, like, you know, all the proper Chicago underground tunes coming in, all the Detroit techno coming in, all the New York garage. So we had all these amazing labels coming into the record shops here that they might not have had as good an access to up in Manchester. So what went on here was the start of something in London, and it was here in the late spring and early summer of 1988 that I believe real rave culture that spread on to be an international culture started right here.
The youth today are still carrying the baton as well.
Oh yes, they are. And you know, back then there was probably only 2,000 or 3,000 people in London that wanted to listen to underground house and techno. Now there's something like 3 million people in London that want to listen to underground house and techno. So, you know, acid house and rave culture has now proliferated the whole world.
Yeah.
It's everywhere, you know. And like I say, right here, this is where it began.
Very much, yeah.